The wail of police sirens shattered the quiet country morning as I stood by the edge of my ranch's lake, watching 3 patrol cars speed toward me. I'd just finished securing my 43-foot Sunseeker Yacht AS, a real yacht to a brand new floating dock I'd installed on the southern bank of the lake, which, for the record, sits entirely within the bounds of my private property. The glassy blue surface shimmered under the morning sun, the yacht bobbing gently like it had always belonged there. Apparently, the HOA didn't see it that way. Officer Ramirez was the first to step out, hand resting near his belt, and trailing behind him in a swirl of dust and indignation came a woman I knew all too well, Karen. But not just any Karina. Sandra Wilds, president of the Sunridge Hollow HOA, the upscale gated community just across the street. She was decked out in her trademark wide-brimmed hat, fitted beige slacks, and that permanent scowl that could clear a bird feeder faster than a hawk. She stormed across the field, finger pointed straight at my boat. "That's a maritime violation. That thing doesn't belong here. You can't just dump a yacht in a ranch lake." I stared at her. "First off, it's not a pond, it's a private lake. And second, I didn't dump it. I sailed it." The officers looked puzzled. One politely asked me to explain, while the other 2 began scribbling in their notepads like I was a suspect in a federal crime. Meanwhile, Sandra was hollering something about zoning codes and visual pollution. Whatever that means. I tried to keep my cool, but then she dropped a threat that stopped me cold. "If you don't move that floating monstrosity within 24 hours, we're filing for jurisdiction over lake rights. We'll put the entire body of water under HOA control." That's when I grinned, because what she didn't know was that just 6 minutes before the sirens showed up, I had signed the documents that transferred full ownership of the Sunridge Marina, the very marina the HOA uses for their events and boat sturgia, into my name. Yep, I bought it, quietly, and I hadn't told a soul. But we'll get to that twist in a moment. First, let's rewind a bit, so you understand how things escalated to this wild standoff. Trust me, this gets better. Before we jump back, quick question, where are you watching from? Drop it in the comments. I'd love to know if you're on team mind your business or team call the cops over a yacht. And hey, if you've ever wanted to see a Karen rendered speechless, go ahead and hit like and follow. Okay, let's roll it back. My name's Derek Foster, I'm 56, a retired firefighter, divorced, and I own a 120-acre ranch just outside of Lake Marigold, Texas. I've lived here in peace for over a decade with my 2 golden retrievers, Buddy and Samson. My hobbies? Fishing, fixing up tractors, and blowing smooth jizz on my saxophone out on the porch when the weather's nice. Now, about the lake, it's completely man-made. I had it dug out with a small team over 2 years, filled it with rainwater, and stocked it with catfish, bass, and bluegill. Paid every penny in taxes, got all the necessary permits. It's mine. All of Ida Lake, land, and peace of mind. That is, until Sandra Wilds moved into Sunridge Hollow. From the moment she unpacked her boxes, she's been a thorn in my side. In her first week, she knocked on my door and asked to know, demanded that I remove a dead tree she could see from her upstairs window. The tree stood proudly on my land, right by the barn. I politely declined. She called code enforcement. Then came the noise complaints about my horses. Then the fertilizer smell. Then my Sunday saxophone sessions. Every week it was something new. But what really sent her over the edge? The yacht. Now, let's be real, I didn't just impulsively buy a yacht. It was my retirement dream. Ever since I was a kid flipping through boating magazines in Dr. Benson's waiting room, I'd wanted one. Life, of course, had other plans. A career in firefighting, a marriage, bills, mortgage, and a draining divorce. But when I turned 56, sold an old property I'd inherited from my uncle in Arizona, and had a little extra saved up, I figured, why not? Most people would dock a yacht at a marina, not me. I wanted to walk outside in my boxers and boots, coffee in hand, and admire my yacht sitting peacefully on my lake. So I built a dock, hired a hydraulic trailer to deliver the vessel, winched it into place, and just like that it was home. But the morning it showed up, Sandra lost her mind. You'd think I dropped a UFO in her garden. She rallied the HOA into a frenzy of letters, complaints, legal threats. You name it. Thing is, I don't live under HOA rule. My property is outside their reach. But that's never stopped Sandra. One letter claimed my aquatic structure created a disruptive aesthetic inconsistency. Another threatened forced community integration. Whatever that's supposed to mean, I ignored most of it. But then came the real twist. One afternoon, my buddy Jacob, who's a local real estate agent, called me and said, "You won't believe what just hit the market." "What?" I asked. "The Sunridge Marina, the HOA's crown jewel." Turns out, the marina's owner had been quietly looking to sell for months. The HOA couldn't scrape together enough cash to make a bid. So I did. Bought it outright. Cash deal. Signed, notarized, and filed it just 6 minutes before the cops rolled onto my land. Now, where were we? Oh, right. Before I got the chance to reveal my surprise, Sandra started up again. Sandra's voice rose in volume as she accused me of being a danger to aquatic aesthetics. Whatever that's supposed to mean. She even had the nerve to march toward the dock like she had some authority to inspect my yacht herself. That is, until Buddy let out a low growl that sent her stumbling back a good 5 feet. To their credit, the officers were doing their best to remain professional, but the looks on their faces said it all. They were just as tired of her antics as I was. One of them stepped closer and asked, "Mr. Foster, are you aware of the HOA's petition to gain shared control over this lake?" I nodded calmly. "I am." "And in about 30 seconds, the HOA will be receiving an email that's going to change the entire conversation." The officer raised an eyebrow. "What kind of email?" I simply smiled. Right then, my phone vibrated. Message sent. And a split second later, Sandra's phone chimed. She glanced down, her expression froze, mouth slightly agape. You bought the marina?" she stammered. I gave her a casual nod. "That's right." The shouting stopped. No movement from the officers. Sandra stood stiff as a statue. The silence that followed was almost theatrical. But I wasn't finished. Because what Sandra didn't realize yet was that I already had big plans for that Marina, plans that were going to force the HOA board to rethink every arrogant decision they'd ever made. And those plans, they were already rolling. Just then, I heard the crunch of tires on my gravel driveway. A truck pulled in fast. The door flung open and a man leapt out, waving a bundle of papers like a sword. I squinted. It didn't take long to recognize the short, stocky man storming toward USA Craig Mulvaney, vice president of the HOA. Craig always looked like he was in the middle of a silent panic attack. He wore sweater vests year-round, even in sweltering heat, and carried clipboards like shields. But this time, he was wielding something more intense: illegal documents. "Derek Foster," he barked, thrusting the stapled packet in my direction like a lasso. "You can't do this. You can't just swoop in and buy our marina." I raised an eyebrow. "I didn't swoop. I paid. You exploited the system," he snapped, flecks of spit flying. "You bought it just to antagonize us." "No," I said coolly. "I bought it because your president thought she could bully me on my own property. This is poetic justice." Craig's face turned beet red. Behind him, I could see Sandra staring at her phone like it had betrayed her. Her lips moved as she reread the same line over and over. "Effective immediately. Full ownership and management of the Sunridge Hollow Marina has been transferred to Derek Foster." The officers stayed still, clearly unsure if they were witnessing a legal dispute, a nervous breakdown, or the filming of a reality show. Craig jabbed the paperwork toward me again. "You see this? It's a cease order. We've filed for an emergency injunction. You can't place a commercial vessel on inland water without it being cleared by the region." I chuckled. "That's not a commercial vessel, Craig. That's my weekend escape. And this lake, it's on my private land. Spring-fed and registered. Unless your injunction somehow overrides private ownership." "You're wasting your breath," he spluttered, completely thrown off. "But you can't just defy community visual standards. You're lowering property values." At that moment, Buddy barked, maybe in agreement, or maybe he just needed to relieve himself. I turned toward Officer Ramirez. "Am I violating any actual laws here?" The officer scratched his head and replied, "Technically, no sir, as long as the vessel's registered and the water's yours, you're in the clear." Craig and Sandra both exploded at the same time, launching into simultaneous tirades. But before we get too far ahead, let's rewind again. How did I end up with enough cash and motivation to purchase an entire marina just to make a point? Here's something not many folks know. Before I hung up my firefighter's helmet, I wasn't just battling blazes. I invested, quietly. I was part of a low-profile investor group that backed a startup developing wildfire detection software. 3 years ago, we sold the patent to a government contractor. My name doesn't appear on any of the public paperwork, but my bank balance certainly noticed. I kept things simple, lived modestly. Around here, hardly anyone knew I was sitting comfortably on a 7-figure cushion, and honestly, that's just the way I like it. There's something funny about how people treat you when they assume you don't have money. Suddenly, your opinions matter less. Your land, your time, your peace of mind, devalued. People like Sandra and her whole crew looked at me and saw someone beneath their standards. Let me tell you about a specific night. This was about 2 months ago. Around 8 p.m., just after sunset, I was sitting out on my porch, sax in hand, playing a mellow tune as the crickets sang back up. I was halfway through a smooth rendition of Summertime when a pair of bright headlights lit up my driveway. It was Sandra, in her little golf cart. She honked once and crossed her arms as she stood at the base of my porch. "I need a word," she said. I slowly set down my sax. "Even into you too. I've reviewed the latest notes from our HOA board meeting," she began, voice full of importance. "We've determined that your lake is a visual liability to our community's image." I nearly laughed. "It's a lake, Sandra. It's hideous, Derek, wild, unrefined, no signage, no buoys. What if a child wandered in?" I cut her off. "No children live on my land. That's irrelevant," she snapped. "Your lake sends the wrong message. We'll be filing a petition for partial oversight." That's when it finally clicked. This wasn't about the lake, or the yacht, it was about power. Sandra and the HOA couldn't stand the idea of someone living freely next to their perfectly trimmed hedges and pristine sidewalks. They didn't just want torture, they wanted control. I chose to fight back quietly, without drama. First step, I called up Jacob, my trusted friend in real estate, and asked him to dig into local assets the HOA used regularly but didn't technically own. Within minutes, he brought up the Sunridge Marina. Turns out the owner had grown weary of the constant headaches caused by the HOA and was looking to sell it fast. Asking price, just shy of $680,000. I didn't hesitate. Now, let's jump back to the present. Craig was still flailing those legal papers, practically demanding the officers intervene. Meanwhile, Sandra had retreated to the edge of the dock, her eyes locked on her phone as she tried to process the storm she hadn't seen coming. "Look," I said, raising both hands in a calming gesture, "I'm not here to stir up trouble, but let's be clear, if the HOA plans on launching any more boats from that marina, they're going to have to ask me for permission." You could have heard a pin drop. Even the breeze seemed to pause. The thought of Sunridge Hollow, a community so proud of its exclusivity, having to request access from me, that hit them like a brick. "You can't do this," Sandra shrieked. I gave a small shrug. Too late. Already did. Right then, my phone buzzed. A text from Jacob. "By the way, looks like they forgot to renew their marina insurance. Liability coverage is now your responsibility. Just a heads up." That was the final nail. I knew I had them cornered. But before I could deliver my next line, a loud crack echoed through the air, followed by a yelp. The dock shifted abruptly. Sandra's heels slipped, and she went flying with a shriek. Craig lunged forward to help her, but he was a second too late. With the elegance of a misfired cannonball, Sandra plunged straight into the lake, a fully clothed, wide-brimmed hat and all. The officers froze. Craig gasped. Buddy barked. Twice, actually. I bit down on the inside of my cheek to keep from bursting into laughter. A few seconds later, she resurfaced, sputtering and flailing like an angry sea creature. "Get me out of here!" she screamed, thrashing her arms in every direction. Craig bent down to help her up, but the dock tilted dangerously again, threatening to dunk him, too. I strolled over slowly and extended my hand. She slapped it away. "You did this!" she howled. I took a step back, hands raised in mock innocence. "Ma'am, I don't control gravity, but I do control the marina now. Maybe the HOA should start budgeting for swimming lessons." But the real shocker wasn't the splash, it came moments later. Everyone was still distracted by Sandra dripping lake water when a sleek black SUV rolled to a stop by the roadside. A sharply dressed man stepped out, briefcase in hand. He had the kind of walk that said he didn't waste steps or repeat himself. Dressed in a navy suit, mid-40s, clean-shaven, polished shoes crunching across the gravel. This guy was here on business, big business. Even Sandra, floundering like a furious cartoon villain, paused to stare. Craig, wiping sweat off his brow, muttered, "Great, who the hell is this now?" The man stopped a few feet from me and extended a firm hand. "Mr. Foster?" he asked. "Daniel Clem. I'm with the county's Zoning and Land Development Office." We shook. "Pleasure. I assume this isn't a friendly drop-in?" "Correct," he said. "We received a formal complaint from the Sunridge Hollow HOA about an unauthorized maritime structure on private land." I sighed. "Let me guess, if they accused me of building an illegal marina?" He nodded. "That's what they said. But before anything escalates, I need to verify a few facts." Behind me, Sandra was now dragging herself onto the dock like a soggy villain from a B-movie. Her hat was crushed flat against her back. Craig tried to blot her off with a sleeve, but she shoved him aside and barked at Daniel. "You're too late. We've already filed emergency claims for lake jurisdiction, vessel seizure, and HOA boundary expansion." "Arrest him." Daniel didn't flinch. Instead, he calmly opened his briefcase and pulled out a folder. "I've reviewed all relevant documentation. I've also retrieved the zoning maps, property plats, and deed history." He looked directly at Sandra, his voice precise. "There's no violation." The air seemed to snap. Sandra's mouth fell open. Craig looked like he'd just taken a punch to the gut. "What do you mean there's no violation?" Sandra screeched. Daniel turned toward her, voice calm and cutting. "This lake sits entirely within Mr. Foster's property line. It is not governed by any HOA boundaries, overlays, or regulations. It is a privately owned, spring-fed water body with no requirement for public access. As for the yacht, it is docked legally and not used commercially. There is no law against owning a personal vessel on private water." Sandra's fists clenched at her sides. "Then why did you even come?" she spat. Daniel looked her square inches the eye. "Because your HOA has filed 17 nuisance complaints in the past 3 months alone." Craig's eyes bulged. "That's confidential." "Not when it's clogging county resources," Daniel snapped. The moment was perfect. Even the officers began exchanging quiet smirks, like kids being told class was cancelled. Then Daniel turned back to me. "Mr. Foster, there is one other matter," he said, lowering his voice slightly. "About your recent acquisition of the Sunridge Marina. That got my attention." He reached into his folder again and Daniel handed me a single page. "There's an expired environmental compliance report tied to the marina's prior ownership," he said. "It was never renewed. If the HOA had ended up buying it, the liability would have been theirs. But now that you're the new owner, it's on you." I looked over the sheet. "Environmental hazard evaluation pending." "Is it serious?" I asked. "Potentially," he replied. "If there's contamination or runoff violations, the county could issue fines. Worst case, a temporary shutdown until it's addressed." That bit of news perked Craig right up. His smug little grin returned as color flushed back into his face. Well, he said, almost singing the words. "Looks like our yacht captain skipped the fine print. Enjoy your broken marina, Derek." I didn't flinch, because what Craig didn't realize was I had done my research. "You said the report was from the previous management?" I asked Daniel. "Yes," he replied. "Then you may want to check the date stamp again." He raised an eyebrow. "Come again?" I reached into my back pocket and unfolded a receipt. It was from the environmental consultants I'd hired a full week before I closed on the marina. I handed it over. "Inspection was completed 3 days ago. Results were clean." They sent the report directly to the zoning office. "It may just not be uploaded yet." Daniel reviewed the receipt carefully. His eyebrows lifted. "I'll confirm with the office," he said. "But if this holds up, you're already in compliance." "Nicely done." Craig's smirk dissolved like sugar in the rain. Sandra, still dripping lake water and bright red with fury, exploded. "He's manipulating everything. This is a coordinated attack on the HOA." Daniel shut his folder with a satisfying snap. "No," he said flatly. This is a property owner exercising his rights, as something your board may want to revisit at its next meeting. He turned to walk away, the gravel crunching softly under his loafers. Then he paused and glanced back. Oh, and by the way, he added, your HOA's license to hold events at the Marina expired last month. You'll need to reapply. The silence that followed was chef's kiss. Now, most folks in my shoes would have thrown a big cookout right then and there, invite friends, fire up the smoker, maybe even break out a bottle of whiskey. Not me. I just went inside, gave Buddy and Samson their breakfast, and enjoyed the quiet. But peace doesn't always last, because at sunrise the next morning, someone knocked at my door. It wasn't a neighbor, wasn't Craig, wasn't Sandra. It was a delivery crew with a letter, a thick, sealed envelope, and two men in matching county blue jumpsuits. Behind them, a white pickup idled with a spool of bright orange tape in the bed. The taller man flipped through his clipboard. You Derek Foster? I nodded, coffee in hand, still wearing my robe and slippers. We've been instructed to post this and inspect the property, he said. On behalf of the Sunridge Hollow HOA Enforcement Board. I blinked. The HOA sent you? For what? They filed a claim overnight, alleged unresolved code violations. Code violations? On private ranch land? He shrugged. We just enforce what's submitted. It's from county compliance. I tore open the envelope. 9 alleged violations. Some were laughable. Unapproved outdoor lighting, excessive reflectivity from a moored watercraft, unauthorized flagpole height. But my personal favorite, a claim that my smoker grill posed a wildfire hazard due to visible soot accumulation. I actually snorted. They were clearly grasping at straws now. Then I got to the last pagia, and that's when my jaw tightened. A motion for temporary land use suspension and full property reassessment. That meant no upgrades, no repairs, no landscaping, no nothing until the county reviewed everything. They weren't trying to fine me. They were trying to freeze me, block any changes, bury me in red tape until the yacht became useless. I stepped outside and watched the crew string orange tape along my front fence like I was being quarantined. And right on cue, a sleek black car rolled up and stopped near the gate. Of course, it was Sandra. Despite nearly taking a dive the day before, she'd returned in full regalia: blazer, oversized brooch, dark sunglasses, clipboard in hand. She stepped out like she was about to film a luxury brand commercial. Craig sat smugly in the passenger seat, grinning behind the glass. Good morning, Mr. Foster, Sandra called sweetly. We're simply here following up on a few standard HOA concerns. We care very deeply about safety, visual consistency, and neighborhood harmony. I raised my voice just enough to carry. You submitted fabricated violations. They're community concerns, she replied. All residents must be held to a standard. I'm not in your HOA, I said flatly. Her smile widened a bit too wide, like a plate with a hairline crack. But your property borders ours, she said smoothly, and the county allows limited input on boundary-facing aesthetics. I took a step closer. This isn't oversight, it's harassment. Sandra tilted her head, feigning concern. This is our civic responsibility. Craig cracked his window open and chimed in. Should have moved a yacht, Derek. Behind me, Buddy let out a low, guttural growl, his eyes fixed on Craig like he was ready to lunge. I breathed in slowly, steadying myself. Losing my temper would have been giving them exactly what they wanted. Instead, I pulled out my phone and made a call I never thought I'd have to. Angela? It's Derek, I said when she answered. Remember when you told me if I ever needed a favor, you'd be there? She laughed. Of course. You saved my dad's barn from burning down back in '09. What's going on? I need your help filing a harassment and nuisance injunction against InHo. There was a pause. I'm on my way, she said. Angela Brown wasn't just any real estate attorney, she was a relentless force in heels. We'd known each other since high school, and she never forgot that I'd risked my life in a wildfire to save her family's livestock. She was smart, no nonsense, and allergic to bureaucracy. After hanging up, I locked eyes with Sandra. You're not going to like what comes next, I said. She didn't respond, but Craig leaned out the window and muttered, you should have kept quiet, old man. Enjoy the lockdown. Then they drove off. The rest of the morning was aggravating. County compliance agents taped off sections of my land, documenting everything from the barn to the solar array. Nothing was officially closed off yet, but it was clear they were building a case. Still, I kept calm, because I had a plan. That evening, Angela pulled into my driveway in her black SUV. The click of her heels echoed up my porch steps, and she carried a binder thicker than a legal textbook. We sat together on the porch as the sky dimmed and fireflies blinked in the grass. I handed her every piece of paper: emails, notices, letters. She flipped through them with practiced precision. "This isn't just petty harassment," she said at last. "This is a deliberate legal ambush. If you let me take this to court, we're not just going to stop Ida, we're going to bury them in it." I nodded. "Good. But I've got one more move to make." Angela raised an eyebrow. "You mentioned something big?" I smiled. "The HOA's annual summer jubilee is in 3 weeks, right?" She nodded. "Yeah, it's their crown jewel event." "Well," I said, sipping my tea, "now that I own the marina, they're required to rent the space from me. They've already started promoting it." Angela blinked. "You're not planning to cancel it, are you?" "Of course not. I want them to go all in. Set up tents, bring the guests, roll out their red carpet." She leaned in. "A broken bar than the night before. I changed the locks." Angela burst out laughing. "You evil genius." I just shrugged. They drew first blood. But the real twist came early the next morning. Just as Angela and I were wrapping up our legal strategy, I got a motion alert from my security system. One of the marina cameras had detected movement. I tapped into the live feed and froze. There, at the back gate, was Craig, bolt cutters in hand. 2 other home members stood behind him, sneaking in under the early light. I zoomed the feed. My pulse quickened. They weren't just trespassing as they were hauling in gear, speakers, coolers, tents. They were trying to throw the jubilee early, without even notifying me. I stared in disbelief as Craig, Sandra, and 2 other board members wheeled folding tables and carried a large speaker system through the back entrance. They thought they were being clever. It probably assumed I wasn't watching or wouldn't care if they set up a couple days in advance. But I was watching, and the bolt cutters still dangling from Craig's hand made it clear they'd snapped the new lock I installed just days ago. This wasn't just trespassing. This was breaking and entering. I stood up so quickly I knocked my coffee clean off the porch rail. Angela looked up from her documents. "What happened?" I turned the tablet screen toward her. "Look." Her eyes narrowed. "The broken bar. Are they breaking in?" "They're not just breaking in," I growled. "They're setting up for their event." Angela grabbed her phone. "We need to call the sheriff. This is criminal trespass with intent to use private land." But I held up a hand. "Not yet." She blinked. "What do you mean, not yet?" "Let them finish," I said. Angela stared. "Finish what?" I walked to the truck and grabbed my drone case. "Let them set everything up. The tents, the lights, the decorations. Let them think they pulled it off." Angela's lips curled into a grin. "You're playing the long game." I launched the drone and sent it soaring above the trees. From the aerial view, everything became crystal clear. 3 large tents were already up. Tables were being covered in red and white checkered cloths. There were boxes of bottled water, decorations, and a Yasa-rented popcorn machine. I recorded everything from every angle. They were fully committed. Angela's phone buzzed again. She glanced at the screen. "Sheriff's office just called me back. They'll send someone out, but we have to file the trespass complaint in person." I nodded. "We will. Tomorrow." "Let them get in deeper." Angela closed her binder slowly. "When this goes off, it's going to be nuclear." The next morning, I took a slow drive by the marina in my old pickup, fishing hat pulled low, sunglasses on. I looked like just another guy cruising to the lake. I didn't even slow down, just cruised by slowly, taking in the spectacle. They'd gone all out. Banners were strung up that read Sunridge Summer Jubilee, a celebration of community. The ironic part, nowhere on those banners did it mention permission from the marina's owner. Because they didn't have it, Sandra was darting around the lawn like a wedding planner on a sugar rush, coordinating everything. Craig stood guard at the front, clipboard in hand, barking orders about table placement to some clueless volunteers. Everyone looked thrilled, oblivious to the fact that I had recorded them breaking in. No idea their happy little event was about to become my moment. Later that day, Angela and I met at the sheriff's department. We submitted a complete, detailed complaint of photos, drone footage, timestamped security video, and a copy of the Marina title deed with my name printed bold across the top. The deputy reviewing it raised a brow. This is probably the most well-documented trespass case I've ever seen. I gave a polite smile. Had some time on my hands, Angela added. We're requesting a formal cease and desist to be served first thing in the morning and a unit stationed there the night of the event. The deputy nodded. Consider it done, but I wasn't putting all my chips in one pot. I had a backup plan, just in case the sheriff's department was delayed or if the HOA decided to play dumb. I called up an old friend, Edric, a local DJ with gear loud enough to wake the next county and a flair for dramatic entrances. Hey, Ed, I said, feel like Gina's surprise party? He laughed. Surprise for who? You'll see. By the night before the big event, the Marina had been completely transformed. The HOA had turned it into a patriotic theme park. Strings of lights sparkled, food trucks lined the road, and a massive banner stretched between two trees. Community excellence starts with us. Then came the moment. At 8:47 p.m., I pulled up slowly, headlights off. Angela was already parked across the street, quietly observing. Sandra and Craig were standing at the entrance, walkie-talkies in hand, checking their final list. I strolled up like I was dropping by a neighborhood cookout. Evening, I said. Sandra squinted. You again? Craig rolled his eyes. You're trespassing on our event, Foster. I chuckled. Actually, you're the one trespassing on my land. I pulled out a neatly folded cease and desist order from the sheriff's department and held it up. Craig snatched it from my hand. After reading the first few lines, his face turned a shade paler. Sandra grabbed it next. It read, by the authority of the county sheriff's office, document number 3498, this notice informs all current occupants that unauthorized use of private property, specifically the Sunridge Marina, parcel ID 9219 constitutes criminal trespass and must cease immediately. She looked up, stunned. This has to be a joke. Angela stepped forward from the shadows, camcorder rolling. Oh, it's very real, and you're being recorded, so smile. Right on cue, a patrol car rolled up behind me, red and blue lights flashing across the tents and tables. Sandra stumbled back. Craig looked like he might pass out. The deputy stepped out calmly and asked, whose event is this? Craig opened his mouth to speak, then thought better of it. I raised my hand. Technically, it's happening on my land. The deputy nodded. Then they'll need to leave unless you'd like to press charges. I turned to them and said, you've got 20 minutes to clear it all out, or the whole neighborhood's going to watch you get cuffed and hauled off. Craig mumbled something I couldn't catch, and then the great unraveling began. Tents collapsed, balloons popped, platters of food were shoved into coolers, decorations were yanked down like the aftermath of a cancelled parade. Guests arriving were turned away at the gate. It was total chaos. And it was glorious. But I wasn't done yet. At exactly 9:30 p.m., once they'd cleared out in a cloud of shame, Edric rolled in with his van. I flipped the breakers, lit up my own string lights, plugged in his system, and threw my party. I called it the first annual Free Ranch Jubilee. No HOA, no rules, just neighbors from nearby ranches, farms, and houses not from Sunridge Hollow dancing, laughing, and eating barbecue under the open sky. But as the music thumped and kids ran around waving glow sticks, my phone buzzed. A text message. No name, just a number I didn't recognize. Enjoy the moment. You may have won this battle, but the HOA board just voted unanimously to escalate. Next stop, civil court. I stared at the screen. They were going to sue me. That text hung there like venom on glass. I handed the phone to Angela. She read it, rolled her eyes, and tossed her braid over her shoulder. So they want a war now? Fine, but they picked the wrong cowboy. The party around us kept going, a line dancing by the dock, teenagers splashing in the shallows, and Buddy happily munching on a plate of ribs from someone's grandma. But even in the middle of all that joy, I knew deep down the HOA wasn't finished. They'd been embarrassed twice, here first by the Yacht, and now by being booted off Marina grounds they once considered theirs. And now they were going to do what petty people do best, to turn to the legal system and weaponize it. What are they even going to sue me for? I muttered as Angela and I made our way toward the food tables. Owning my land too hard? They'll make something up, she replied, already typing into her phone. False claims, zoning violations, misuse of commercial space, a broken bar, probably emotional distress next, Angela muttered. You'd be surprised how imaginative petty people can get. I wasn't losing sleep over a court case. What worried me was the drain of the hours lost in hearings. The paperwork, the attorney meetings. Every minute spent fighting them was a minute stolen from the ranch, from the quiet, and that was the goal. Not to win, just to wear me down. Piece by piece, Angela handed me a bottle of water. If they push, we'll push harder. Harassment, defamation, abuse of legal process, I will hit them back. I glanced out across the marina. The fairy lights twinkled off the surface of the water like tiny stars in motion. They're going to throw the entire HOA handbook at me, I said. They think I'll fold under pressure. Angela gave a sly smile. They don't know who they're dealing with. She was right. This wasn't about justice for Thema, it was about exhausting me until I quit. Sure enough, 2 days later, I was served. Some stiff-looking guy in khakis marched up the driveway with a smug grin and handed over a thick envelope. Mr. Foster, you've been named in a civil suit by the Sunridge Hollow Homeowners Association. Angela opened it while I kept tossing feed to the chickens. Her jaw tightened as she skimmed the pages. They're accusing you of creating a nuisance next to their community, she said. And get these, they're claiming you deliberately weaponized your property rights to cause emotional harm. I stared at her. They're making it sound like I turned my yacht into a missile. She kept reading. They want injunctions, damages, and they're petitioning the county to reclassify your land use. I leaned back against the chicken coop. Which means they're trying to strip away my right to run this place as I see fit. Exactly, Angela said. They're hoping you'll cave before it ever goes to court. I nodded slowly. Then it's time to hit back. That same day, Angela filed our official response. But we didn't stop there. We launched a counterclaim that documented everything. Every hostile encounter, every aggressive letter, every time they crossed the line. We even dug up former residents of Sunridge Hollow who had moved away because of the HOA's behavior. One man arrived at our gate carrying a binder labeled "A Home Madness, Evidence." Word spread quickly. The local radio station caught wind of it. Neighbors started dropping by to show support. One old guy just came up, shook my hand, and said, "About time someone stood up to those bullies." But the real chaos hit on the third day after I'd been served. I was down by the lake pulling weeds when I heard a diesel engine approaching. A massive delivery truck rolled up to the marina gate. The driver hopped out, clipboard in hand. "Morning. Got a delivery for Sunridge Hollow. Equipment for a talent show, a stage gear, chairs, audio setup." I frowned. "They're planning something again?" "Dunno, sir. I was told to start setup by Friday." I stepped forward. "This is private property. There's no reservation on file, and the HOA doesn't own this land." The driver looked uncomfortable. "You're the owner?" "Yep, Derek Foster." He glanced around. "Well, you might want to speak with the lady in the van. She's running the show." I walked around the truck, and there she was, Sandra, sitting in the passenger seat like she was holding court. Clipboard on her lap, iced latte in hand, smug enough to make your skin crawl. "Derek," she said, feigning surprise. "Didn't expect you back so soon." I folded my arms. "What's going on?" "Community talent showcase," she said cheerfully. "We're hosting it right here." "No, you're not." She raised an eyebrow. "Actually, we are." With a dramatic flick, she held up a folded document. "According to this lease," she said, "Sunridge Hollow signed for annual marina access 10 years ago. It auto-renews unless formally cancelled, which you didn't do." I grabbed the paper and scanned it. She was right. The previous owner had signed a rolling lease agreement. I had assumed all previous contracts were void with the sale, but this one had a clause that extended unless I formally terminated it 90 days prior, and I hadn't. My stomach twisted. Angela took the paper from me and read it carefully. "This gives them temporary access," she said, "but not exclusive rights and definitely not permission to throw a full-blown showcase without coordinating with the property owner." Sandra beamed. "Tickets are already sold. Press is coming. If you cancel, you'll look like the bad guy." I clenched my jaw. I couldn't legally stop Thema yet, but I wasn't going to make it easy. Angela leaned in, her voice low. "We'll challenge this. File an emergency motion to suspend access until the court decides." "But in the me a broken bar I let them build," I said, voice flat. Sandra's grin widened. Perfect. She hopped out and started giving orders to her crew. Tents went up. Equipment rolled out, and the stage began to take shape. Angela looked at me. You holding up? I gazed out across the Lake Yamai Lake, the one I dug with my own hands, the marina I'd poured my soul into. All I wanted was Pysia, and now they were stomping all over it like it belonged to them. My fist clenched. They want a showcase, I muttered under my breath. Angela raised an eyebrow. What was that? Let's give them one, I said, a slow grin spreading across my face. She narrowed her eyes. You're planning something, aren't you? Oh, absolutely, I said, my tone dark. Something they'll never forget. Angela crossed her arms. Should I be worried? Only if surprises make you nervous. That night, under a moonlit sky, I set my plan into motion, a one that would turn their little spectacle into a lesson they'd never forget. The night before the so-called Sunridge Hollow Community Talent Showcase, I barely slept. Not because I was restless, but because I was ready. Every smug smile, every letter stuffed in my mailbox, every baseless complaint and call to the couch, they all played back in my mind like a highlight reel. I was done playing defense. If it was a war they wanted, then I'd give them Onia fueled by facts, filings, and just the right amount of Texas grit. By 6 in the morning, I was suited up in my boots, folder in hand, and dialing a quiet call to Deputy Howard, the sheriff's liaison, a fair man with a sharp respect for the law and zero patience for HOA drama. Morning, Deputy, I said, just sent something to your email. It's urgent. Let me take a look, he muttered. Then, after a beat, he gave a low whistle. Well, I'll be. Where'd you get this? County Archive, I replied. Angela found it last night. We drove 2 hours round trip to dig it up. He chuckled. They're not going to be happy about this. That's kind of the point. After hanging up, I drove out to the marina with coffee in hand, letting the sunrise warm my windshield. From the road, I could already see them buzzing around. Colorful tents lined the water's edge, chairs arranged in perfect rows, a cheap stage decked out in shiny blue drapery, even one of those inflatable dancers flopping wildly in the breeze. Vendors were setting up food stalls, and someone was testing a mic on stage. Check 1, 2. Sunridge Hollow loves you. I parked near the entrance, and there she was, Sandra Wilds, strutting around in a blazing red pantsuit, headset clipped in, clipboard ready, barking orders like she was running a concert. Craig was off to the side, fumbling with decorations and yelling at teens to hurry up. When Sandra spotted me, her smile went razor thin. Well, come to enjoy the festivities? I didn't say a word, just walked forward, raised my hand, and let out a sharp whistle. The entire place froze, even the inflatable guy stuttered to a halt. A moment later, Deputy Howard's cruiser rolled up behind me, lights off, but very much on the clock. Angela stepped out from the passenger side looking like she was headed straight for a courtroom. Battley boots, denim, and all business energy. Sandra marched toward us. What's going on here? Angela met her with a firm stare. This event is cancelled. Craig puffed his chest. You can't cancel it. We have a legal lease. I nodded slowly. You had a lease. It expired at midnight. He blinked. That lease renews automatically. Angela smirked. Not if the owner files a land use and ownership reassignment termination, which Derek did. Sandra's mouth fell open. I didn't see anything filed. I hand-delivered it to the county courthouse last night, I said. Stamped, certified, and logged. Filed it just after the 90-day deadline passed. Retroactive reassignment. Angela stepped in again. Since the previous owner no longer has authority, and no written renewal was obtained from the current owner, Derek, the lease is null. Deputy Howard produced a stamped document from his folder. You're welcome to verify this with the county clerk, he said. But as of now, this land is off limits to the public without explicit permission from the owner, which they don't have, Angela added. And never will, I said flatly. The microphone on stage let out a loud squeal as someone fumbled with the volume knob. Then, silence. Sandra's face turned crimson. But we sold tickets. People are coming. This is a community event. Angela tilted her head. Then maybe you should have consulted the community before hijacking private land, Craig snapped. You planned these, waited until the last minute. You're damn right, I replied calmly, because if I had stopped you sooner, I wouldn't have this. I pulled a USB drive from my pocket and held it up. Drone footage, audio recordings, time-lapse video from my security cams, proof that you're board trespassed, broke locks, moved in equipment, and sold tickets to an event on land you didn't own. Angela handed a printed packet to Deputy Howard. We'll be filing formal charges this afternoon. Sandra staggered back. No. This isn't happening. Oh, it's happening, I said. You tried to ruin my name. You harassed me, filed bogus complaints, broke onto my property, and played the victim while doing it. Deputy Howard raised his voice. All attendees need to vacate the property. Vendors, pack up. This is now a civil matter under investigation. Non-compliance may result in arrest. And just like that, it all came crashing down. The DJ pulled his plugs. Teens started tearing down streamers. A lemonade vendor muttered, "Well, this is awkward," and walked away. Sandra's headset hit the ground. Craig kicked a folding chair and stormed off. As the last of the crowd dispersed, Angela turned to me. "You good?" I let out a long breath. "Yeah, just tired of pretending that people in suits aren't bullies too." "You think this'll stop them?" I looked over as Sandra, arms crossed, shaking with rage but too embarrassed to speak. "Maybe, but I think they finally understand who they're up against." Angela smiled. "So what now?" "I'm taking the yacht out," I said, letting the dog ride up front. "Might even throw on some jazz." "You've earned it." As I headed down toward the dock, Buddy and Samson trailing behind, Sandra shouted one final time from across the lawn, "You haven't seen the last of us." I turned, gave a wave, and smiled. "I hope not," I said. "Still got a few surprises left." Then I climbed aboard, untied the ropes, and drifted across the calm, quiet water of my lake, my home, my peace. A man, a ranch, a yacht, and a promise not to be pushed. Enjoyed the story? Ever had a run-in with an overreaching hoe? Share your experience in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more real-world revenge tales where the good guys win one peaceful lake at a time.